Call to order the 8th of September 2022 Avon Town Council member. We have a packed house. I'd like to thank everyone for showing up for the budget presentation tonight. If you would please join me with stand, rise, join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Julie, would you mind taking roll call, please?
Don Loudon.
Present.
Robert Pope.
Present.
Steve Eisenbarth.
Present.
Aaron Tevabaugh.
Present.
Greg Zuzan.
We have a quorum. The first item on the agenda, wonderful item, is our employee recognition. Ryan, are you starting this?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming. This is one of the things I love doing, especially the town's barely 25 years old. So when we get to actually give employees a 25 year anniversary, it's really special because there's only a few people who've gotten this. So Sean, if you'd be so kind to come up. Sean was one of our first 6 police officers employed by the town. So we're excited to be able to give this to him. I've known Sean for a long time. As long as I've worked here, Sean's been here. So especially over the last 2 years, Sean's been a good mentor to me. And so I appreciate everything he does. Sean's fantastic. He's just got the best demeanor. And if you need someone, he never gets mad. He's always calm, cool, and collected. This is my perspective. I won't speak for others here, and I really appreciate that about Sean, especially as I kind of started to take over this role as town manager. I appreciated that mentoring that Sean gave me, and so I appreciate that. So thank you, Sean. Here's your award. We have a couple other things for you as well. If you wouldn't mind staying up here. Congratulations. Thank you. Okay. Miss Lather is actually online, so we're going to turn it over to her and let her say a few words as well.
Congratulations, Sean. I am beaming in from the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, and I'm sorry I could not be there in person, but I did not want to miss this opportunity to congratulate you. 25 years ago, I was the law enforcement director of the new Avon Police Department, and Sean was one of 6 brand new police officers that was hired and entered the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy in Plainfield. And I can't tell you how much you could look at this one individual and know that they were going to be special and they were going to succeed in their career. And so I can't tell you how rewarding it is for 25 years later to see this person that was 28 years old when he was hired and has moved up the ranks to police chief. And it's very rewarding for me to see this all happen. And I'm so happy for you. And I'm so proud of you. And I'm proud of this police department that is one of the best police departments in the state. And congratulations.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you.
I want to mention that when Sean was hired, it was not an easy process. He went through a 10-step process that included several background checks, agility test, a polygraph test, and I just can't tell you how this person is so filled with integrity, and he's a very tenacious person. And the town council, the Avon Police Department should be very proud of this individual. And like I said, congratulations, Sean. I'm very happy for you.
I've been told that there's a special recognition for every 5 years of service, and I feel like this doesn't do justice to 25 years of what you brought to us. But I'm very glad to hand over your 25-year service pin, and I can't thank you and congratulate you enough. Thank you. Thank you so very much.
You stand right there, just do what you're told. It's a pretty good chance I get fired tomorrow morning, so if y'all just keep in mind what's getting ready to happen. So,
I thought Sean would cry, not you.
yeah, I did too. This is, I didn't realize this was going to be so hard, but there was a time that Sean and I worked together in the investigations division, along with Jeremy Chapman. He's here tonight too. About 2 months before Sean was appointed as police chief, he worked arguably the most difficult case we ever had. And I want to kind of walk you through what that case looked like. It's kind of weird because at this moment we have 34 officers on staff, and only 7 people currently that are on staff were here when this case happened. This case kind of shocks the conscience of what actually happened to these two poor women that took place. And so I'm going to walk you through the case really quick. We're going to talk about it very briefly because my nerves are hitting me right now pretty hard. I'm not going to mention the suspect's name because it's not necessary to mention who he is, but to understand that the work that went into that case came from you, Sean. Back in February of 2014, we got a phone call from an agency inside Marion County, and the phone call was quite bizarre. Administrator from this agency called and said, I just dealt with 2 young women who tried to file a false report that they had been abducted, sexually assaulted, battered, and in front of children and their significant others. And they made the comment that if they didn't stop telling their story, they were going to turn around, put their handcuffs on, and take them to jail for a false report. He was making this phone call to us as a heads up that these 2 women that were making this allegation against this individual were now on their way to tell their lie a second time to Avon PD. These 2 women showed up. And Sean was ready to talk to them. He listened to what they had to say. And by all accounts, this was an absolutely unbelievable story. He came in, he shared it with Jeremy and I. He said, I'm not really sure what we have going on, but these 2 women are making these allegations and we got to figure it out. Within about 15 to 20 minutes of interviewing these 2 women, who had just endured about 24 hours of the worst time of their entire life, Sean steps out of the office or the interviews and tells everybody, hey guys, I think there might be something to this. Jeremy, can you check Walmart video, right? Mike Soika used to work for our agency. Tom Owens was here at the time. I don't see Tom right now here in the room. I think he might be out covering the road, but Tom Owens went out and we're physically checking the areas. And sure enough, everything these 2 women were saying was lining up with what you saw in the video. These 2 women were abducted. These 2 women were abducted in the presence of a small child. They forced, this individual forced these 2 women at gunpoint behind a Walmart and just did some of the most ridiculously evil things you can possibly imagine. But Sean listened. This guy is straight up evil. He does this abduction. He takes the women back to their home. He continues to assault them, sexually assault them again, and he leaves with their vehicle. Now, these 2 women have had their backs turned, or had officers turn their backs to these 2 women when this took place, and it was a very, very difficult situation for us to navigate. Sean cleared this case in less than 2 days. Less than 2 days. The suspect was found still driving the stolen vehicle. He still had the gun that he used in his hand. When he was taken into custody, he made a comment to the officers in Indianapolis at the time Aaron Tebow was working for them, that agency, that he should have went down in a blaze of glory and started firing rounds and getting involved in a police action shooting, but he didn't. So Sean comes out 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. We go out to the scene, we identify him, we take him into custody, and there's one person that this guy will talk to, and it's Sean. And Sean listened. This guy went on to have arguably the most disturbing interview and confession that I've ever witnessed in my time, in my career, on TV, you name it. This was as bad as it gets. I remember him in the interview room, and he said to Stoops, he said, "Whatever they said I did it." Now, what was remarkable about the case is that when we took him into custody, he had his cell phone. Jeremy Chapman had just started pursuing his cell phone forensics endeavors, and Jeremy actually was able to assist by extracting the entire video of the sexual assault that he had recorded on his phone. This individual, faced with all of that, ended up agreeing to go to prison for 100 years in Indiana. In 2019, he was incarcerated in Miami County Correctional Facility, and when the guards came by to check on him, his roommate was dead. And earlier this year, he was just convicted for having murdered his own cellmate while in prison. Shortly after this case took place, Sean was appointed as our police chief. He was never recognized for his efforts. Some of that is my responsibility as well, knowing that you didn't get to receive what you should have received in the recognition. But today, I had to use a calculator online so I didn't screw this up. 3,135 days later, we're here today from the day this individual was arrested. And Julie has, you can take that out of the case, or the big one, I'm sorry. The American Police Hall of Fame is recognizing Sean tonight for an outstanding criminal arrest case. And so we went big on the budget. Sorry to the council members on that. We'll talk about that later if I'm still here. Fair enough. So the American Police Hall of Fame is awarding you the Certificate of Achievement in Criminal Investigations. The certificate that we ordered includes the medallion, includes the uniform medallion that you would wear in your certificate, as well as a second version of all of that for you to use as you see fit. But this is a case that really encapsulates your ability to care for others, your desire to never give up. And while we may never speak to those victims again, your actions speak to every person in this room. Thank you.
I'll try not to cry and be emotional because everybody knows that's really not me, but I do want to say a few things. I'm sure none of them will be even close to what you deserve. I've been here almost the same amount of time as Sean. I have had the pleasure to be close with him almost all of those years. Some of them I was on nights and we didn't see each other that often. But I have watched him as a person, not just a police officer, not just a chief, not just a supervisor. I have been able to see how much he cares for his family, how much he loves his wife and his daughters, his grandchildren. I know how great of a son he is. I was able to see that. Personally, I know how great of a friend he has been to me. So many things he's helped me through throughout my life that he'll never know how much I appreciate those. As far as department wise, man, I don't really have to say anything to anyone here in this room. Everybody knows the kind of person he is, the kind of leader he is. Several of us have been through different administrations in different places and here. I've told several of you the story before, but some may have never heard it. There was one time before Sean became chief that a few of us here were looking for different avenues of employment just because of the way we felt and the lack of appreciation we felt. I had a conversation with him one night when I came on shift and he was still here working late hours like he often did and does. And I said, man, we just got to find a way out. This place is so messed up that it will never be a place that anyone will want to work at before. If you don't know the culture of this department now and the love we have for each other, the passion for this job, the care we have for the people, that came from one place, and that's here. In a matter of days, when he was put in that position, he completely changed the culture around here that I never thought could happen. So thank you. So several of us wanted to give back to you, so we pulled together. We wanted to provide you with a gift. For you. There's no wow and no thank yous. That is nothing compared to what we could try to do to show you what we appreciate from you. So thank you.
I don't usually like to get up here and talk. Wow. I was not expecting this at all. We've handed out awards before. We've recognized people for things that they've done. We always try to do that the best that we can because it does, we know it means a lot to people to care about them as an individual and not just an employee or a number. And I can't tell you how good this makes me feel tonight to feel this appreciation. It's overwhelming. Usually I'm the one up here kind of handing out awards and stuff like that. And I get choked up, and I know sometimes people see it, sometimes they don't. And usually afterwards, I'm talking to Brian and like, man, did I sound like an idiot? Because I think I was starting to cry up there again. And I just love these guys and these girls that work here so much. And whenever they do something good or we hire them, it just tugs at my heart. But tonight, I'm not feeling that. I feel that appreciation. I don't feel like this is something that should have been blown out of proportion to this point. I'm just doing my job. 25 years ago, I took an oath to come out here and do this job the best that I could and in the best way that I knew how. And that's what I did. That was my playbook. I didn't have any secret or anything like that. But I was surrounded by great people. And it made it really, really easy to come out here and do this job every day. There's not many places where you can go to work and get in the car every day, and on your way to work, be happy, be thankful that you're going in, and know that when the day is done, that you probably helped somebody along the way, whether it's in the lobby, whether it's on a case like Brian mentioned, whatever it is that you might do. And that's the real reward. It's not the plaques. It's not the extravagant gifts, although that is extremely nice. I do appreciate that. But the real reward is knowing that what you did at the end of the day helped people, and it got the bad guys off the street every chance that we get. Sometimes they're not off the street for very long, but we have to work within the constraints of the law. And that's what's so important about that oath, is doing this job properly. And a great man once said, if you do this job properly and with integrity, there's no other job you can do that's more noble. And it doesn't matter what the paycheck says at the end of the day. If you're out there helping people every day that you can, that's what really counts. And all we've ever done since 2014 is just try to hire people that was like-minded and had that same character and that same integrity. Almost every one of you that's standing back there against the wall here today or sitting out here in the seats, some of you retired and moved on. You guys all share that same quality. I'm not special. You guys, we're all the same. We're all brothers and sisters in this career. Till the day you die, you can't get it out of your blood. So I want to thank my wife and my kids for being here especially. They put up with a lot through the years. This job, I tell every one of these guys and girls when they start, this job will chew you up and spit you out. If you don't take the time to get away from here and decompress, it will take its toll on you and your family. If you don't believe me, you can ask any of those three sitting right there. It took me a long time to figure that out because I thought it was the job that was most important, and it's not. It's the family. It's what you do outside of here that truly identifies you, not this position. So every one of you new officers that's back there, remember that. I know we talk about it when you start, but heed that warning. Take time to get away from here and decompress. Don't let this job become your identity. Your identity is sitting right here. This is your legacy. After we give away all these awards and stuff at the end of the day, you're going to retire, even though Jared wanted me to retire tonight. Eventually you're going to retire and they're going to replace you, and you may get a plaque on the wall, and life's going to go on. This department's going to go on, and you won't be forgotten, but you're not going to be remembered as well as your family is going to remember you. I want to thank my brothers. They're here tonight. That was a real unexpected surprise because I usually can't get them to do anything outside of work. My best childhood friend's here tonight. I thank him for being here as well, Ari. Thank you for being here, because I know he's busy too. And yes, Jerry, I'll thank you for being here too. But really, thank all of you for coming. This means a lot to me. I've talked long enough. This meeting's going to be extended now by 20 minutes, and I appreciate everyone being here and for all the recognition and everything. Thank you, Brian, I know that you're responsible for this, and I'll get you back later. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
We're going to take a short recess for some pictures. call the meeting back to order. Please, please take conversations outside of the council chambers. Thank you. The excitement just waned. If you are still here, that means you're very excited for the budget presentation.
I love the dad joke, by the way.
Yeah.
Good way to get started.
Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any questions? Entertain a motion.
I don't have any questions. If no other questions, I'd like to make a motion that we accept it as presented.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Julie, roll call vote, please.
Robert Pope,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth,
Four.
Aaron Teveba,
Form.
Next item on the agenda is first of 2 public comment opportunities. You may comment on items on the agenda that are not a part of a public hearing or on a specific matter within the council's jurisdiction. Please come up to the microphone, state your name, address, and limit your time to 3 minutes. Seeing no rush, we'll close that section of public comment. Next item is department updates. Who's the first one? Mike, you look like you're the one ready to go. You got to follow that up.
No one can. Don't feel bad.
Good evening. I'm Mike Tully, Planning and Building Director and Building Commissioner. And I wanted to, I will keep this very brief. I wanted to, I'm sure you got a copy of my report. If you got any questions on it, feel free to email me. I apologize for the lateness of it, but normally I would have had it done last week, but we were in training. And on that note, I wanted to take a moment to thank the council and to thank Ryan Cannon as well for allowing us to attend that that seminar. It's been excellent. It's for my side of the building, it's me, Bill, Ian, and Nate. And, you know, everybody I've talked to, Julie's in the class too, Ryan's in it, and everybody's really enjoyed it, and we've learned a lot. So thank you much for the opportunity.
Great.
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mike.
If you have any questions, feel free to let me know, please.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Looks like you're up.
Outstanding.
Mr. Peoples.
All right, so Plan Commission had a brief 1-item agenda, and then they're back to the same old, same old. So in September, we'll have 5 on the agenda. Only one of them possibly controversial on that one. And then the October agenda, it filled up with 5 cases. And those 5 cases, 2 of them will be controversial. But the good or bad thing, depending on what people think, is that the October one is just plats. So they're all ministerial petitions. So if they meet the standards, the Plan Commission has to approve it. But that doesn't mean that we won't have remonstrators and some people speaking against them. It just means it becomes difficult sometimes. Board of Zoning Appeals, again, has nothing on the agenda, but I think that's going to end in October. It should, because there's a couple of cases on the October agenda on the Plan Commission that needs a variance for us to pass that one. So I think that Board of Zoning Appeals will have at least one variance on the agenda, a setback variance for the October cases. That's it. That's all I've got. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you.
Ms. Marshall.
Good evening, Shelby Marshall, Parks Director. I wanted to also extend a thank you. One of my staff members and myself attended the leadership training with Bill Westfall last week. Very much looking forward to the next session. So thank you for allowing us to go to that. Parks Department received the Lane Shark mower that was previously, it was purchased before my time, but just wanted to update you guys. It has arrived, it's hooked up. It's really cool. It's going to be really great for trail maintenance. So thank you for that. Our PRBC, Parks and Recreation Beautification Council, met last night. Our next meeting is November 2nd. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Nothing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wade?
Jared Wade, Communications Director for the town of Avon. Chief Stoops had to step out for just a minute, but he wanted me to go ahead and cover his department updates. It really just a full page of thanking me for everything that I've been doing for him. So, Brian, if you want to just sit this one out. Okay, good. So for me and for the communications portion of what we do, I wanted to give a shout out to NDOT. NDOT Megan from NDOT came and had a conversation with me about the construction that was happening, and that is still happening on US 36. I think the conversation went well. I appreciate Megan and NDOT being just opening up their transparency and their dialogue back and forth. She has been a great resource for me to reach out to, not only on social media, but directly via phone and via email if I need questions answered or things of that nature. So it's really neat to watch the last year and a half evolve to the point where we have a very respective professional relationship back and forth, and we're able to address concerns from the community directly to where they need to go to. Speaking of Facebook, as most of you probably knew, we lost access to Facebook for a little under 2 weeks. We have regained access to Facebook. I know some people freaked out about that in the community. Why doesn't a town have Facebook? Well, we have it back once again, but there was a small little blackout. Those issues have been resolved. Those issues were on Facebook's end. Everybody said it. I'm going to say it as well. I appreciate Ryan setting up the leadership training. One of the big things that I had heard that just resonated and repeated itself over and over and over is a great leader is velvet and steel. They know when to be steel and they know when to be velvet. And I think the gentleman that stood up here just a little while ago, Chief Stoops, is a perfect example of that. He can be extremely firm and direct and hard as nails, but then in the next second, and he showed it right here, he can be vulnerable and he can be emotional, if you want to use that word, compassionate. And I appreciate Chief Stoops and all that he does for us here in the town, as well as the other locations around the town of Avon. If you don't live in the town of Avon, just know that you're being cared for and you're being watched out for, and we appreciate that. Lastly, the new Avon Action Center, hosted by C-Click Fix, is live. We did a soft opening of that about a week and a half ago. It's being used as we speak. Reports are coming in. This is the service that we have started up where residents can simply take a quick picture of an issue that they see on the trails or on the roads or anywhere around town, then upload it to our database, show exactly where on the map this issue is at, and then give it a brief description. That is then transmitted directly to the department that it needs to go to. So that way they can repair those potholes, they can fix those downed trees on the trails or anything like that. I mentioned this before. I think this is a great service. This is a great feature for the town, just to show complete transparency to those that live here, as well as help with keeping productivity up, because it will filter out the stuff that is not within the town of Avon. If it is a service that Hendricks County needs to oversee and repair, it will automatically filter that out and give them that contact information. I was hoping to give a bit more of a walkthrough of that, but as a one-person show, it's a little bit difficult to do multiple things at the same time. So happy to demo that to anybody that would like to look a little bit deeper into it, but I'm also happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Do you have any numbers on C-Click Fix interaction so far since it's went live?
Yeah, I don't have the exact number. I want to say it's only about 8 to 10. Now, again, this has not been promoted at all.
Sure.
We have not shared this online. This is probably the very first time that it's been shared in a public format, that it is live, but it is being used. I was actually just at a restaurant today, and the manager was talking to me about the bridge over 267 and how there are some issues with the bridge. This was a perfect way for me to say, we have this new feature where you can actually report it, and then you can stay on top of how that repair is progressing forward. She was very excited about that. She said, I'll take a picture of it on my way home and report it this weekend. I said, that's exactly what you need to do. So they're learning about it, and once we do a heavier marketing push, I think more and more we'll start to use it. I can get you additional numbers as it grows and as we get it out there.
The only thing that I would say for people that don't speak East Coast is it is called C-Click Fix.
Yes, C-Click Fix is the service that it's hosted by. If you look in the Apple App Store or the Android App Store, we actually have our own designated apps. You can look up Avon, Indiana, and it will pull it right up, and you're going to be able to use it through there. Or you can look on our website, avongov.org/action center, and you can go through there as well.
Thanks, Jared.
My pleasure.
Mr. Moore.
Steve Moore, Public Works Director. I too am appreciative of the leadership training. I just realized though that I'll need to do the extra 2 phases in order to begin to understand Jared, but other than that, I think it's pretty good. What we have going on right now is we have crack seal going on. They're here and then they're gone, and then they're here and then they're gone. It's weather related, equipment related, staffing related probably, but it'll be in and out for about the next 2 or 3 weeks to complete their projects. Preservative steel should start later this month. The community crossing submittal, we realized that we got awarded the $2 million project we did earlier. They had another round and we applied for that. And that's for, we applied for it for Galen Drive North and East and Raceway Road improvements. We should hear about that sometime in October, whether we were awarded that or not. Our contractor is finishing the trail construction on 200 North, 625 East, and Dan Jones. They've got some minor work to remain, and that's it. So we should be seeing that wrapping up fairly soon. We have our tree service continuing with right-of-way tree trimming. Got quite a bit to do, so it'll be a while. 100 South reconstruction. We're hoping that we switch traffic about September 17th. So right now we're trying to get them finish paving and wrapping up the south lane, switch over to the north lane and work on that, and then hopefully that should go faster than the south lane. There's less infrastructure to do, so we're hoping that they do switch traffic somewhere around the 17th. Raceway Road, 100 North roundabout design continues. Survey is complete on Ronald Reagan at 1050 for some access management design. We've had some high accident volume there, and so we're going to try to control the access a little bit better there to make it safer. 900 East and Angelina Way roundabout survey should start fairly soon. They actually did some preliminary work, and now I think they go out and we have the scope. They're going to go ahead and finish that up probably in the next couple of weeks. Annual pavement marking project is wrapping up. They got the long lines done, and when I say long lines, I'm talking center lines and edge lines. Then they have crosswalks and roundabouts, which is handwork. They have a couple crews working on that off and on. That'll go on for the next week or two, hopefully, and get that completed. Let's see. Storm utility, we got updated on our projects from our consultant just yesterday at the stormwater meeting. Looks like cobblestone project will probably bid maybe later this year for construction next year. That's probably the biggest thing going on there. MS4, we have ongoing inspections. Roadside mowing and trash pickup is always continuing. Happy to report that we got our cycle done before the Labor Day weekend. Pothole patching, we've actually do quite a bit of pothole patching even in this weather, and we're doing that ongoing. Same thing with sign replacement. They're using the new gas-powered post driver, and they're liking it. So that's pretty much it. Any questions for me?
You're getting a big nod in the back by Keaton.
Yeah, he's a big smile. Yeah, it's different than swinging a sledgehammer. Okay.
Thanks, Steve. Brian, I think you're it.
The Avon Police Merit Commission met last week and tendered 2 conditional offers of employment. Just a quick reminder, we have 4 current vacancies, and so we hope these 2 applicants will make it through the conditions that are set forth as they move forward. We've recently been releasing some of our newer officers to solo patrol. A couple of them are still finishing up field training We suspect everybody will be released probably about the middle of September. So at that point, we will be 34 officers strong, completely independent, nobody in training. But if these 2 conditional offers come to fruition, obviously they'll follow into that lead. I did attend the Project LifeSave International Conference last week. I want to talk about that just very briefly. That's a topic of discussion that's really touched Hendricks County here in this last week or so. The young girl who was found and unfortunately ended terribly in Plainfield, as well as a gentleman who was found successfully in Danville this week. Actually, prior to coming to tonight's meeting, we actually placed the transmitter on that gentleman's arm. And that way, if he were to wander again, we'd be able to find him much quicker. And that's a service that we provide across the entire county. It's not just Avon. It's actually led by Avon Washington Township Fire Department. So we continue to work well with them with that program. Julia Lewis is their public education director. She does a phenomenal job. We've been busy fielding interviews from the media, talking to other agencies, and facilitating that level of training and engagement. So happy to answer any other questions you may have. Just a couple of brief highlights there, though. Dan's laughing at me, so I'm going to sit down.
It's not at you.
Oh, okay. That's good. We'll see.
No questions. Thanks,
All
Brian.
right. Thank you.
Hey, Julie has a couple of things she'd like to share.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a department. Sorry.
She is a department. It's true.
Department. As discussed earlier, when we met with Greg Garitas, I will be submitting our notice to taxpayers tomorrow for our budget, the 10-day notice for our public hearing. That's going forward with the budget. Again, I would like to thank Ryan and council for the training. That was fantastic. I have learned quite a bit and can't wait for the next one.
Do you know any more about Jared that you can share with us now?
I know a lot about Jared. I cannot share that publicly. But I do want to thank you guys. It was fantastic. And thanks to Ryan and Suzanne for organizing the food and the facilities for the week. And thanks to the school system for letting us use that amazing facility. It was a beautiful new facility. So
Thank you. Moving on, next item on the agenda, council comment and liaison reports. Start with you, Ms. Loudon.
Nothing for me. Since Sean left the room, I did want to thank him profusely for his 25 years of service and his great leadership, and for being the role model that he is for the other officers within our town.
Mr. TV Ball.
Yeah, Parks Board met last night. I was not able to attend. Anything pertinent, Ryan?
No, I don't think so. I think Shelby offered a couple of things. They did have some discussions, had a couple people who presented requests to kind of do things in the park, and they've kind of tasked Shelby with doing some research on those and getting back to them. So those may eventually make their way to you. So I think that's about it.
Gotcha. No, and I do want to say thank you to all the staff for attending. I appreciate everyone's appreciation for that. But that's a project that's kind of been in the works for about 3 years now. And ironically, we kept having to put that off. But the feedback that I got from Mr. Westfall was that he was actually excited that happened because this was an amazing group. So I'm very excited to see you all take that and run with it and apply that. And congratulations, Sean. One thing I want to point out on that story we heard earlier, and Brian's just way too humble to tell it, but I remember that night and talking to those guys in the aftermath of that. And in addition to all that stuff that happened, that monster actually took some of the kids' toys and bikes and those types of things. And those two guys went out the next day and shelled out to replace all that. So I don't know that that story's probably ever been told publicly. It probably should have been. But yeah, so even though the iceberg is on top and we see all that stuff that happens, there's always that stuff underneath that we don't know. And so that just tells you what a stellar group that we have here.
Mr. Eisenbarth.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, Brian, what you and your whole staff, everybody does, Sean and everyone. It's just very humbling for us as a council to see that. So thank you very much for that. That was great. I want to kind of maybe piggyback on a couple of things Steve Moore had here. First, it was yesterday when Megan from NDOT was speaking. And I think that's great. Whenever we can have NDOT speak on what's happening on the progress on US 36, that's great. It is out of our jurisdiction, but we definitely hear about it. So So I do appreciate NDOT, their transparency, and we want to always foster those relationships and let them share their schedule and where they're going with that. So that's great. The other thing is on crack sealing. Jared, since you're commanding the computer, could you possibly pull up that PDF that shows, it's the one that has the blue lines on it. It shows the crack sealing area. And the reason we probably can't see it here, but anyone that might be watching this from home, what you're looking at, these blue lines, I'll mention some of the neighborhoods that were the crack, there you go. We can see it now here locally. It shows the roads covered there that are doing this crack sealing. And I think Steve mentioned it's only about 10% along right now, but it's moving along and shooting all this time to get to November 1st is what they're shooting for. So that covers like Stony Meadows, Westbury Pines, Beechwood Farms, a number of different things that are going on there that you see those segments. The other one, Jared, can you switch to the one with red lines on it? And what we're looking for, this is going to be, these little red lines here are showing where, when he mentioned pavement reclamation, this is where pavements are being restored. Those are areas there that you can see that's coming along. So that's a pretty significant area. Also, there's some patching along the Ronald Reagan to handle the rutting in that area. That's going to be happening. And I know I probably shouldn't go through all these, but it's just kind of interesting. Probably the last one I'll mention is the trail projects. I think that this is pretty exciting, where all the trail connections, a number of these you can see throughout our area. And that is, one would be like County Road 200 North to the east of Dan Jones. So they're making connections there over the bridge. You can, around the school area, Dan Jones, south of 150, you may notice on the east side of the road, the new connection of the sidewalk there. So there's some pretty neat areas. And Jared, no, I don't have a visual on that one, but I just thought I'd mention a couple of those things. So we had some very good things going on. Neighborhood drainage projects, Stratford subdivision, that area is going to get some pretty intensive attention by having video cameras going through the pipes to look to see what can be done and get an assessment of that. And in several other areas that we could see for the stormwater, and that's their dollars are being used very well. Steve did mention, pardon me, that painting, he calls them the lawn lines, center lines on the major roads. That's really going to bring a nice safety factor to the town by having that visibility. So it's going to be just a great enhancement to the motoring public, and I think it'd be good. So I just thought I'd cover some of the DPW things in my speaking. That's all I have.
Thanks, Steve. Two things. First, congratulations to Sean. I know he's not here, but he knows this. Congratulations and thank you. His character, his value. I'll speak for myself. He's made my perspective much easier. The other one, I actually want to thank Aaron for pushing hard on the building. I've heard it from a large number of employees. Very thankful for that opportunity. But that's it. Next item on the agenda, new business, selection of insurance broker.
Yes, so last year, the town council actually asked that I go through this process and actually do an RFQ for brokers, just for us to look at other options in terms of our brokers. So we did send that out. We did get a submission from 4 companies. We created a kind of a committee to review those proposals. So there were 5 people on the committee: Robert, Julie, myself, Dan, and then Sean as well. So a little bit from all the different departments who typically have to work with the liability insurance provider. And so we did review those proposals and we rated them. I did provide those score sheets to you and the results of that. And the firm that did, or the broker that we thought was the best, was Highland. You can see based on their scores, they were substantially higher. We did have the option to interview if we felt necessary, but being that Highland is currently our existing provider and really the gap in the scores, we felt like it didn't make sense to waste their time doing interviews. as well as all of our time doing it when there was such a discrepancy to basically make up. So it is the recommendation of the selection committee that we continue forward using Highland as our broker. Happy to answer any questions.
Do we need to make a motion to that effect? Okay. Well, that's my only question. Questions for Ryan, staff? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve Highland as our insurance carrier for the year 2023 calendar year.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Julie, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Aaron Tiefenbaugh,
For.
Steve Eisenbarth,
Four.
Don Loudon,
4.
Robert Pope.
4. Next item on the agenda, department budget presentation. See, I'm going to guess, Ryan, you're going to give a highlight, and then we're going to go, I'll let you organize.
Yeah, I'll kind of walk you through it a little bit. I think I talked to all my staff, and especially based on the length of time that Sean's appreciation took, we're probably going to do an abbreviated version of the budget. This will be on your next 2 agendas as well, so you have multiple opportunities to kind of talk through it. So I think Brian's going to do a little bit of the police department, and then I'm going to do kind of a summary of the rest of the town, and then the staff is here if you guys have any particular questions that you want to do. Just kind of real briefly, I'll kind of run you through the documents that are in there. The first one is the summary of funds. That's the document that Greg Garitos, Julie, and I sit down and we work through. We analyze kind of what our revenue is and then what we project our budget can be for the following year for each of those different funds. And as you guys are aware, all of those different funds can kind of be used for different things. So that's kind of the first document. The next document that you have is a summary of budget changes, which is kind of what I'm going to run through, but I'll kind of circle back around. Then the next document you have is your Form 1s. The Form 1 is actually the format in which we actually submit our budget to the state. And so that's all the individual funds and the individual budgets within those funds. And then as we've kind of always done, we do a Public Works program budget just because Public Works has all the different funding sources. We believe it makes it easier for you guys to see it and understand kind of where things are being paid for and how we're getting to those numbers. Likewise, we provided the Public Works maintenance trends, which is what we're spending each year to basically maintain and upkeep our roads. So you have a copy of that as well. And then you have the Parks program budget. Parks is a little bit the same. They have kind of multiple sources and basically how they fund that. So same thing, kind of programs, what programs are providing, and then what funds they're being paid for. And then the last document in your packet is the Form 1s, which are the for the non-general fund. So those are all the other funds other than the general fund. So if you don't mind, Brian, I'll turn it over to you. I'm going to let Brian kind of say his piece, and then I'll kind of fill in the rest, and then we can have some discussion.
Yeah, just very briefly, honestly, it's not to go within each line would be painful, but I was just going to explain that the overall increases are because we're looking to increase our staffing by 2 officers. And we're also looking to try and pull the compensation range within the 50 percentile of where we're at in our general area. Those are the biggest reflections you see. Ryan did a really good job at putting together a budget summary. We could talk about all those lines if you wanted to, but all those major increases are because of adding 2 additional officers. I would point out there is an increase in the training budget as well from $35,000 to $50,000. We have a lot of new officers on board. ILEA has increased their fees for training and the supplies as well. So part of that is a growth for our current staff, but also for new officers that we're getting ready to send. So I'm happy to clarify any questions you may have, anything that may have gone up or gone down, but Ryan's version was pretty concise, pretty brief, really. I'm gonna go sit down. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. So I'll kind of just run through, again, Brian did a good job. And I'm just going to kind of highlight some of the changes just to kind of give you guys some background. Again, don't want to go line by line. If you guys dig into those and you have additional questions, myself and my staff are available to answer those. The first one, which is always the big one, is what did we do with employees' pay and salaries? And so what we actually did this year is we're proposing performance increases are being recommended for most positions. There are some that we're giving kind of standard raises to, but we kind of did an analysis of what our employees were worth to us and then kind of compared them as well to what other people in similar positions in other communities. So we kind of came up with different recommendations for each employee. Those employees who were generally competitive or they were kind of where we thought they should be, they were kind of at the bottom line of about 5% pay increases. There were some that went up to as much as 15% pay increases. And that's, again, not solely, it could be based on their performance, but then also just based on the fact that a similar position in another place, they could actually go and make more money. And so again, we've got a great team. We want to be able to keep our employees here that are good. The 5% number, again, inflation is crazy. We don't necessarily believe we can probably keep up with inflation. The next item I'm going to talk about is health insurance, and health insurance is going up about 8%. And so that cost of the health insurance for the employee is actually split. It's not solely borne by the town. So again, a 5% increase to the staff isn't even sufficient enough to necessarily keep them up with inflation. But again, within the confines of our budget, we felt like that was a reasonable number. So again, pay somewhere between 5 and 15%. We have not done our liability placeholder. So in the budgets, we put a 10% placeholder basically for all the different departments to basically keep that. I already mentioned the health insurance. In just the town manager budget, I know there's been some discussion at whether it would be planning and building, or if it may help the clerk treasurer, if it may help the town manager, or it may kind of rotate departments. But we did put a position in for like a summer intern, so we put some money in there to do that. One of the things that came out of our liability insurance review last year was the potential for us to upgrade our computer system. So currently we have our Microsoft software on all of our individual computers. And one of the recommendations was that we actually upgrade to Office 365. And so Jared has been doing a ton of research for us, and I think he's even worked with Robert as well. And so we'd like to make that change. So from a cyber standpoint, that's good for us. It is an additional cost, and it's an ongoing cost. So we're hoping that we can actually implement it towards the end of this year, but then we budget next year to pay our annual fee and basically keep doing that. What we really found was a lot of other communities have already gone to it, and we're probably a little bit behind. So not terribly expensive. It was around $8,600, I believe, somewhere in that range. So the other thing, I know we've had a lot of discussion about updating the comprehensive plan, and I know we've had some discussions with Bill about that. So there is $75,000 in the budget as well. That's not enough to update the comp plan, but it's enough for us to get started. Depending on what Bill's staff and his caseload is, he may be able to do some of it in-house, but there is some consulting work that they need to do. And again, it may take us 1.5 years or 2 years, but we think we could update some pieces of it and then kind of keep rolling through the process. So there is some money in there for that. Non-general fund, the pay increases are the same, so I'm not really going to talk about that. Same with liability insurance and health insurance. In the Parks Department, a couple things. Shelby has really said she wants to push additional programming, so we did increase the budget for the programming, doing events and programs in the park and what we're doing. We did budget. I know, again, we've talked for a long time about doing a bond to do some of the parks improvements at the land, on the land that we bought. We have some planning to do kind of leading up to that, which Shelby's going to help me with and to try to push through the process. So it may be later in the year, but there's about $192,000 in there that would go towards a bond payment. So we'll start having some of those discussions probably middle of next year about whether we can do that. And Julie is wholeheartedly behind another bond. So thank you, Julie, for that. It's a continued investment as well. I know one of the things we continue to hear, and Steve mentioned earlier, investment in trails and sidewalk connections. So there's about $500,000 worth of trail and sidewalk improvements, kind of various steps. There's some design, there's some right-of-way acquisition, there's some construction. And so again, we're going to keep working on that and continue investing in creating sidewalk and trail connections. Next year, we have our final payment on the Summer Lot property, so that's in the budget. And again, one of the things, if you guys don't know, I think you guys probably, most of you saw it, we late last year, early this year, we built a concrete pad for kind of an amphitheater up on the Firkins property as part of the park. And one of the things we've quickly learned is that while it's done the way it should have been done, it's actually facing right into the sun, and it's not acoustically great. So the park staff, Shelby and Chuck, have actually done some research and actually found like an amphitheater canopy that would work perfect with the pad that we built. So we put some money in there to do that amphitheater canopy, as well as extend power. When we have bands that play up there, we actually have to rent a generator and actually set it up there. So we'd like to extend power to that as well. We think that'll help our events and some of the things we're doing here at the park. So again, some additions to the park. We have a couple equipment every year in parks. We have some equipment to do. Next year, we've identified 2 RTVs that are getting high in hours and wearing out. So we'd like to replace those 2 RTVs. We kind of joke that if we don't order them soon, they won't come. As you guys know, you approved one this year. We don't really expect to get it till probably next year. So those are kind of important to our fleet and what we do as a parks department. That's how we get around. It's how we maintain. And so replacing those will be good. Moving into TIF, we have replacing the emergency generator. I think this actually came up in some of our ARP discussions. And so the emergency generator that actually powers the police station and the town hall is pretty old at this point, and we're having some costly repairs, so we'd actually like to replace that. And so we put that in the TIF fund to be able to support. There's funding in there for the construction and the matching funds for the Dan Jones Widening Phase 1 and Dan Jones Widening Phase 2. So we continue to fund those projects so that those can be completed. We've obviously as well talked a lot about a new government center. And so there's about $1 million budgeted for architectural services to start doing that work. We have the RFP out for that now, and we kind of expect those expenses to kind of start flowing in next year. And so we've got funding in there for that. Again, Steve mentioned earlier, we're starting some of the design work for the roundabout at County Road 900 East and Charles Nelson Drive. And so there's actually funding in to construct that roundabout next year. We're proposing to do that with local funds to kind of accelerate and address that intersection. So there's funding in there for that. And then there's also funding for the library passing blister that we're building. So we'll go to construction for that next year. So there's funding in the TIF district for that as well. So a lot of capital improvements. Again, the great benefit of the TIF district is a lot of the capital improvements that we do, we wouldn't be able to do without that source of revenue. The next one is the Cumulative Capital Development Fund. Greg Garitas talked about this earlier. We have a 5-cent Cumulative Capital Development Fund to be able to fund capital. It funds about half of it funds street maintenance. So that's kind of how we keep moving with our street maintenance. We did increase some funding for police vehicles. If you guys recall earlier in the year, Brian asked to order 7 vehicles. And so we did increase that funding to be able to provide additional vehicles. Brian and I need to work through a couple of those details to figure out exactly how many vehicles that is and what the financing structure will look like. But it's an increase of about $90,000 to go towards police vehicles. It also has a replacement of a town vehicle in there. We do need to replace one of our pickup trucks. Public Works, it does have some increased maintenance funding of about $80,000 towards what we kind of call our maintenance improvement plan, which is what Steve both talked about: crack sealing, road paving, pavement markings, all those things that we do. Again, cost of inflation, if that doesn't go up, we're not keeping pace with what we need to do. And quite frankly, $80,000 is probably not sufficient. It's not even 5% of what the maintenance improvement plan budget is, but unfortunately, that's about all we could do this year. Again, every year we try to do funding for ADA and sidewalk replacement. Again, making the community safe for any pedestrians who are out there using it. It also has increased funding for traffic signal maintenance. And again, kudos to Steve. He's invested some additional money in our traffic signals, and I hope people are starting to kind of see the benefit of that we're actually facilitating better movement of traffic. So there's some additional funding in there to kind of keep those signals functioning and working at a high level. And then again, I talked a little bit earlier about the MIP. It does fully fund the maintenance improvement plan as well for 2023. I know I'm boring you, so I'm going to try to wrap up. 2 funds left. Edit. I think this is something new, something Jared and I have talked about. We did propose a new position in Edit. We've added what we're going to call a marketing communications specialist position. So this would be someone who could kind of help Jared. What we found is that we're not utilizing Jared's talents to the best of our ability because he's doing things like running the meeting here versus him out being in the community and kind of helping with some other things. So we think this would be a great component to kind of, again, improve our communications and our marketing and how we're getting information out to our residents. John's talked to you guys in the past about how he feels it's important to have some funding for job incentive in a training program, and we do have money in there for that. Again, I know he talked earlier at the work session, and one of the projects we're trying to get funding for had asked for this funding. So again, we'd like to keep that in there to be able to, if projects do come along. Fortunately or unfortunately, next year we have an election, so we do have election expenses because it's a local election. So we do have to pay those expenses. It's about $30,000, maybe 35 even, somewhere in that range. We don't really know, so we're just kind of estimating based on what it's been in the past. We do put that into edit. That way it's a one-time expense, and then it kind of moves through the system versus if we try to squish it into the general fund, it kind of creates other issues for us. As you guys know, we did pass a resolution for a reorganization, and so we did budget money actually to do a financing and reorganization study for next year. So again, money in there to do that if we decide to move forward. And then in edit, we fund some things like community organizations as well as the Chamber of Commerce, Hendricks County Economic Development Partnership, and we've been able to keep that funding in there as well. So the last one is stormwater. It continues to provide funding for addressing backlogged storm drainage projects. This was one of the things when we created the utility, we wanted to be able to do some of those capital improvements. Steve mentioned one of them was cobblestone. The other one is Avon Heights, which is right here on the corner of Avon Avenue, one of the oldest neighborhoods in town. They've got bad drainage. And so we're progressing a project. We expect to do that one next year as well. So we have two big capital projects in the storm utility next year. Steve did request a new position in the stormwater utility as well, kind of a drainage inspector position. He felt like he needed that to be able to continue to prove his operations and keep up with the volume. Certainly a lot of inspections and things are required as a part of our stormwater utility, and we want to be able to stay on top of those things. So Steve did request an additional position. That is an entry-level position. Likewise, there's some additional drainage engineering to help accelerate some of the projects we're working on. Steve's got a lot of kind of projects in the pipeline. Again, stormwater, adding a new employee means we need another truck, so we budgeted another truck as well. And minor drainage repairs, and can kind of continue to do MS4 efforts. The two things I will add, we did, as Steve mentioned it earlier, we did present the stormwater budget to the stormwater utility, and they did recommend approval of that. The town council does have the final say in that, but it does also need to be approved by the stormwater board. So they did take that step, and then Shelby and I talked to the Parks Council last night, and we presented the parks budget to them, and they also were supportive of the budget. So that's it. Can I answer any questions, or can any of my staff answer any questions?
We got the revenues earlier. You've thrown us the highlights of the budget. Where are we at balancing it?
Well, so good news, bad news, I guess. The non-general fund is completely balanced, so we don't actually need to make any changes. And I kind of expected Greg to mention it at the work session, but he didn't bring it up. Right now, as it's presented to you, the general fund's about $70,000 over budget. But talking to Greg and Charlie late last week, they think we can go to the 70,070,000, which means basically all of the budgets would be balanced, if that's what you guys want to do. So
we just raise the revenues, like we just do it like that.
A little bit, but I think if you recall, Greg said that their expectation was that our income tax revenue was going to come in higher, and so I think that's what's giving them some comfort in growing the budget a little bit more. But remember, it's a balance. So if we have a fund balance in general fund, if we end up spending more than what our revenue is, then that reduces our fund balance. So the worst case scenario is if the revenue doesn't come in, then some of the fund balance will come down a little bit.
Ryan, you're setting an expectation here. That
I know. I'm a little scared about it, but I know.
It's better than 300K that we've been running in the history.
Right,
yeah. One other question. I was just wondering on timing of, timing of reviewing like the metrics with employees when they're going through, I don't know if you call it performance review or whatever, just a review of someone, and then the time of the raises. Is there a do you feel comfortable it's the timing of that, that the employee gets positive reinforcement, they get a chance to feel, heard, and as you're going through this time of reviewing that? Because I see that tying those two together as very important. And I think we probably are doing that, but I didn't know the timing of how that works.
Yeah, so a couple things on that. So you kind of have to remember there's two separate things. There's the budget and then there's what we actually pay people.
Yeah.
And so what we're asking you to approve is a budget. And then what I tell my department heads is they have the discretion to decide to pay somebody up to that amount, but they can't pay more. So you guys are basically establishing a maximum pay. So if that employee, typically at the end of the year, we do our employee reviews. And so if at the end of the year, that will be at the discretion of the department heads to say, I feel you're deserving of that, or they may say, I'm going to give you 5% now, but here are things I want you to improve. And if you improve those things, then in July, I'm going to give you the other 5%. I'd leave that discretion to the department heads. So all I'm really asking you to is approve a maximum amount, and then it falls to the department head then to decide if that employee deserves it, or if they want to give them incentives and say, I know Steve's had that discussion about he wants his employees to do training, and so he may withhold those, and if they meet certain training criteria, then he may give them that additional pay. So again, it would be at the discretion of their supervisor to decide if they get that or not.
Sure. I don't want to trudge on micromanagement, but I like the idea of reinforcement. And just like you're using an example, that give them the opportunity, the carrot with training. And when they do these things during the review process, that's the good time that the departments can do that. So that's good. All right. I was just wanting to make that association. Thanks.
How confident are you in the 10% liability placeholder? Your estimate for health insurance was pretty spot on. We just approved new insurance broker. What's your confidence level that 10% is going to be on the money there? Because that's going to have a big impact on whether this thing is balanced or not.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about it just because we haven't gotten into it yet. But now that we've selected the broker, I think over the next couple of weeks, we can have that discussion. We had a couple of big losses last year, so I'm not sure exactly how those will impact us, but I'm still hopeful. I mean, 10% is a pretty healthy grow. So I would hope that it would be less than that, unless those losses we had would tip it. But so just as a reminder on the liability insurance, our renewal date is November 1st. So I know we just approved our broker, but I'm going to ask for a little forgiveness on Highland's part because they're going to be rushing this in to get the renewal to you guys basically at your last meeting in October, right before the renewal is due. And really just approving them tonight, we're only giving them about 30 days to basically pull it all together and get it done. So I had kind of pre-warned them to be prepared for that. And so I think they'll work to it and get us that information as quickly as we can, but we'll have to see. I'm comfortable. I think it's enough. And if it's not, I think we can work through it.
I think we run into this and we have the same conversation and turn through it every year. Why do we not go out to these RFQs sooner and select them so that they have time to give it to us? Because budget deadlines never change.
Right.
So why are we always pushing them to that 30-day mark?
Right. Well, that was my fault because it was on me to get the RFQ out. So I just didn't get it out in a timely manner. But we're going to try to actually change this. And if we wouldn't have done the broker thing, we would have done it this year. We're going to try to move our renewal date to actually October. And so that we hopefully don't get into this in the future. And that's something Highland and I had talked about before. We didn't do it because we were in the process of doing this broker review. And so, but next year I would probably look at doing that. And again, then the hope is if we're not going through that broker review every year, then we don't get in this position and we can avoid having this problem in the future.
Okay.
Yes, I agree that was my fault.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments? Show the budget introduced. Moving on, next item on the agenda, Resolution 2022-18, declaring surplus and worthless property.
Yeah, two things. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Dave. Go, Dave.
We were tired of listening to you anyway, so. We are asking for a resolution to declare a 2011 Dodge Charger as surplus property. It's reached past its end of life, and the last Charger we took to auction, I think, brought $1,700. This vehicle, we have been told by the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy that they will give us 100 hours credit in training there, which equates to $10,000. So I think that's a pretty good deal, but we need your approval, so.
Especially seeing as they said those rates are going up, so it's gonna be a lot more value. Oh. Can we get one more runner? I actually do have one question. All it says on the report is that the computer is going to be destroyed. I just want to make sure, what's our procedure for ensuring that removal of all data is taken care of?
Yeah, ProNet, that's part of ProNet's responsibility. They take out the hard drive and they actually destroy it and make sure this computer in particular it really needs to be destroyed. Yeah, this is the one. So that's part of ProNet, and they assure us that that's done properly.
Roger that. Thank you.
And just to add, there is some surplus property on there as well. Some of the town stuff, as you guys are aware, you're sitting in new chairs. So we have old chairs to get rid of, some that are broken and that are trash. So we're asking for those to be declared worthless, so we can either donate them or destroy them or trash them.
And the typewriter is an Underwood manual. Is that what that is?
It should be a Cracker Barrel relic.
I move we accept resolution 2022-18 as presented.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Julie, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Robert Pope,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth,
Four.
Aaron Teveba,
4.
Don Loudon.
4.
Next item on the agenda, final reading ordinance 2022-21, bond ordinance authorizing bonds for Chicago Industrial. Assume you're speaking to this one, Ryan.
Dan's going to handle it.
Oh,
Yes, this is your bond ordinance for this Avon Logistics project, which we now call the Chicago Industrial Project. And this bond is the final step before issuance of the bonds. As you will remember, this is about a $5.5 million project of infrastructure improvements. This will be a developer purchase bond. And so they will buy it and then buy the bonds, and then the town will collect TIF revenue from this property and use that TIF revenue to pay back the bonds. The bond ordinance makes all the appropriate statutory findings that are required through the Economic Development Commission process. It also establishes the parameters, important parameters on the bond term itself, such things as it's a bond of up to $5.75 million to pay for the infrastructure and the cost of issuance. It's no more than a 25-year bond. The payments are January 15th and July 15th. The maximum interest rate is 5.75%. We would like to get much lower, but that provides a parameter. And there would be, as you might notice in section 5, no interest will accrue on the first 3 years of the issuance. And so those are the terms. The ordinance then further authorizes the town council president and the clerk treasurer to execute a whole bunch of documents as is customary. So this is the final step in terms of approval that authorizes the issuance of the bonds. Happy to answer any questions.
did you have something, Julie? Are there any questions for?
I know he covered Julie there, section 5, making sure that she's authorized. So I make a motion that ordinance 2022-21 be accepted as presented.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Do we have any further questions or discussion? Nope. Okay. Julie, we have a first and a second. Would you mind taking a roll call vote, please?
Don Loudon,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Aaron Teveba,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth.
4.
Please make sure that interest rate is lower than 5.75. That's all. Next item on the agenda, public hearing and introduction of ordinance 2022-22 approving election redistricting plan. I should go open up the public hearing first.
While we do it, won't we have me
Introduce it
introduce it
Apologies.
for purposes of public hearing, and then I won't say much later. How about that?
Thank you, sir.
So as you know, you're required to redistrict every 10 years. So after the census is complete, that information must be used to draw new wards. In your situation, you have three district representatives. Two of your members are at large. You have to draw the map for your three representatives. So that's what this ordinance does, is it defines those, makes slight changes to those, and amends your town code accordingly, because in your town code, it has the description of each of your voting districts or your wards. And so it makes no changes to anything else other than just moving those. There's a map which is attached also, which shows them in a map form, but they're described particularly. As you recall, when you do your redistricting, you are not free to do whatever you want to do. You're confined to certain legal standards, and that essentially is that each district must be as compact as possible. And then comparing one district to the other, they must be as equal in number of voters as possible to each other in relation to one another, so that one vote is the same in one district as it is in the other. And so you will see the 5 required findings in this ordinance, that each ward is contiguous territory and that it is reasonably compact, contains as nearly as possible equal population, and does not cross a census block or precinct line, except of course to make them equal. This is introduction only. You should ask for public comment on the proposal, and then you will show the ordinance introduced.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We will go ahead and open up the public hearing at 8:38. Anyone wanting to speak on the redistricting, please come forward, state your name. Please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address, and limit your time to 3 minutes. Seeing a huge rush, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 8:38. Open it up for questions from council.
No questions, but my word is pretty ambiguous where it just says anything that wasn't included in 1 or 3.
Easy for you. Dan, you mentioned the kind of the important part. What's the delta between those districts? I know we were shared that previously. What's that number? How close are we to voters being direct with each other? Is that a Ryan question?
You pushed me. I'm pretty sure it was 1.9%.
That seems extremely low. What's that compared to other communities, other redistrictings?
Yeah, that is very low. That's really good. The guidelines offered by the state election board is that they would like to see communities stay under a 10% deviation. Now, that's not the law. The law says as close as possible. So something is very close. There is a institute which publishes the deviations county by county, city by city. It's based at DePaul University. I did take a look at that. The results of redistricting are all over the place. So I really think that if you can get below 3%, you're doing a really good job. And I think the staff here did do a really good job of saying if we can just, that we don't have huge challenges about equality between the districts. And so your districts were already pretty good. Now they're even better, even closer to one person, one vote, which is really there are 5 factors, but that's the really important. That's the reason we have this concept. And so I think that deviation is very, very, very good for you.
Big kudos to Daniel for working that out. I do have, it's not a question. Well, it might be. I think it's 3-1C states 1 council member shall reside in each of the 3 council wards and be elected by the respective voters of that ward. I believe that's incorrect.
That is incorrect. We've changed it today.
Okay.
Yeah, that actually it will be amended to say, or be changed to say, 1 member shall reside in each of the 3 council wards and be elected, and this will be the change by all of the voters of the town. And that was just, I think, a misunderstanding about how it actually works. There are 2 ways to do that. So that'll be changed. And then of course the at-large are elected by all. So really it is, you have to be eligible to run for a district, you have to live there, but then everyone in the town votes for all 3 districts. and the two at large. So that's a good catch. We worked on that this afternoon.
Excellent.
The final
One
version will
updated
show
in my
that.
packet, so I made sure and include it.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
did it literally maybe an hour or two before your work session started. So we caught that.
Roger that. Any further questions for staff?
Nope.
Seeing none, show ordinance 2022-22 as introduced. Next item on the agenda, legal counsel report.
Just two things. We have the Tallman mediation coming up next week, and we will report to you whether we are successful or not in that respect. And then secondly, we have a hearing on our motion for summary judgment filed in the Duke Energy case, and that is next Thursday. And that's the attorneys arguing the law in front of the judge. We do not know when we will get a decision. But we will advise you accordingly, but that argument will be conducted on Thursday. No evidence is presented that. It's just a legal argument, but as soon as we have a ruling on that, we'll report to you and keep you informed.
I think my agenda is out of order. Usually we have our second public comment before legal counsel report. So next item on the agenda, the second of two public comment opportunities. If you would like to speak, please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address. Limit your time to 3 minutes. Again, seeing no rush, we'll close that section of public comment. Next opportunity, council comment. Anything? Anyone? Council calendar.
Next meeting is September 22nd. And just as a reminder, we talked about at the previous work session that we'd like to have a work session to begin at 6 p.m. So we'll get an invite sent out to all of you guys for that and get it posted. That's all I have.
That's it. Meeting adjourned.